there was a bodega that now there's today, if you were to go there, it's totally different. That whole section was changed, maybe because of the notoriety of the location. I don't know. But there was a major operation out of there, and he had several other locations. But according to Diaz, who knew more about them than I did, because I only got a one payday out of them, and what happened was they shorted me $700. Supposed to give me $8,000 for the week of July 4th. Now, I had a decision to make. You're going to pay me $8,000, short me $700? How can you do that? I mean, that's like you're not. What was that saying? Fuck you? You can't. I can't accept that. So I stood firm and I sent a message to them that they shorted us $700 and I need to be paid the $700. They sent back a message. Go fuck yourself. We're even. That didn't go over well, so I put pressure on the store for about 4 or 5 days. I paid another team $1,000 to sit on the store when I wasn't working. So basically, for 16 hours a day, they had a patrol car in front of their store. So guess what happened to their store?
But the sales dropped, and you
harassed them. The sales dropped precipitously. Yeah. Right. So now he's pissed off. He sends a message to Baron Perez that he's going to have me killed.
We got Mike Dowd, Brooklyn's, I want to say, finest, or NYPD's finest, but we got to call you the dirtiest cop that's ever come out of Brooklyn, NYPD, Mike.
Thanks. I really appreciate that.
I mean, what a story you have, man. It's literally a movie, and it's been made a movie. The 75 was a fantastic documentary.
Yeah, it was very well done. Tiller Russell directed it, and Eli Holtzman and a whole host of producers put it together. It was they spared no expense. Let's put it that way, except on me.
Right. And you know what's interesting about you, Mike, is you were raised in Brentwood, Long Island, and you come from a big Irish family. Your dad was in the New York FD fire department.
Yes. And
growing up, I mean, you didn't have a criminal mind, right? I mean, or did you?
No, you know what? I didn't. But what I had was, and it's unfortunate the way things turned out, right? But I had an entrepreneurial spirit. And I found that mixing the two didn't really work, being a police officer and having an entrepreneurial bent. You know, it sort of led me to try to find alternative ways to earn.
Right. And you joined the NYPD in, what, 82?
Yeah, 1982, I was 21 years old in a couple days, and it was a scary, thrilling moment. I'll just say that, you know. I was still young, and I think I had 3 whiskers on my face. I counted them, you know. So I was just really starting to turn into manhood. I was a late bloomer, and sure enough, I get a job as a cop, and maybe I wasn't ready.
Were you ready when they dumped you in East New York, the most violent precinct, the 75th precinct? Were you ready to be a ghetto cop, as you call it?
So that's the twist here. So as I graduated the academy in July of '82 or something, I think it was July of '82. The Madison Square Garden, it was a big ceremony. It was the largest graduation class in the history of policing, okay? We graduated 3,700 cops almost at one time. So we graduated the academy, we get sent to these assignments, and one of the experiences was make sure you have a quarter on you when you go on patrol, because there's not enough radios. There were just so many bodies released at one time that when they sent us out to patrol, and at that time I was in the 110 precinct, which would consider, which you know, back then it was the hub of the Cali and Medellin cartels, because of the airplane access between Kennedy and LaGuardia. Most of the shipments of cocaine were getting moved in and out of the airports back then from these locations. So I was in a quite lucrative area when it came to the exposure to drugs. But I was mostly insulated from it as a rookie cop, because what do you know? You don't know much, but there's people out there that knew.
Right. But what wasn't lucrative was your salary. What were you making at the time? I mean, what was an NYPD guy making?
Yeah, that was a little laughable, I guess. And, you know, and it's sad, right? Because if you take a guy that has an entrepreneurial spirit and you put yourself in a position, at that time I made $17,000 per year, which if you break it down, it's, I don't know, $300 a week. I mean, like off the top of my head.
It wasn't a livable wage then.
No, it wasn't a livable wage then. You know, I lived at home with my family at the time, and there was no real immediate thought of moving out, because what, $1,000 a month in rent, that would be 70%, maybe 80% of your pay.
Right.
So yeah, there was financial constraints initially as being a young cop to consider. So.
And you guys didn't even have radios. They didn't have enough to go around. The city was kind of underfunded with the policing.
Right.
And now the crack era is hitting. Right.
Yeah, so that's a fast forward. So yeah, so eventually, they solved the gap with the radios, and so I did a year what they would call in NSU training. So, but in that course of a year, they didn't train guys like myself for 6 months. So picture this: you're a guy out of the academy. They drop you in the street, and you had to wait 6 months to get trained. So you had 6 months of self-training, right? You'd be on the beat by yourself. Occasionally you'd have a sergeant come over, ask you a couple of questions, and you'd be handling police calls of service during that time. You had minimal interaction with let's call it the violence of the street, because unless it happened in front of you as a foot patrolman, you weren't going to get involved in a case, 2 blocks this way, 6 blocks that way. So you basically had your little fiefdom there, your little foot beat, and you maintained order in that area as best you could. And it was Queens. It wasn't out of control in the aspect of there wasn't daily assaults of violence in this area of Queens. It was relatively peaceful. Now, there were shootings, but shootings, as we would come to learn, are directly associated pretty much with the drug business in the entire city at this time.
So when did you get your own squad car and start to really respond to big calls?
So after I finished my training, 6 months of training, which, by the way, taught me how to be a good cop. One of the lessons I got was, and people I don't share this story very often, and I'll do it for you. I was trained by 2 training officers, myself and another rookie. We sat in the back while they made their stops. So that was the training. We really didn't respond to many calls. These 2 guys were old-time Gold Shield detectives that had a lot of experience. They weren't investigators, but they had experience, and they were going to teach us how to be cops. Well, what they did was they stopped from one bodega to the next bodega to the next bodega, and then they went on meal. So they really trained us how to utilize what was in front of us to our own advantage, which was the bodegas. They'll feed you, they'll booze you. If there's some swag, you can get that free too. So there's a lot of things that you learned by being in the car with the older guys without actually a word being said, right? So they wouldn't tell you this is what you got to do. They would just do it. And if you were sharp enough, you pick up on it. So some of us are sharp enough to pick up on it. And I learned as a young cop, before I got my seat, when I went to East New York, that the street can give you things.
So you learned that favors are handed out, and bodegas would want to give out free food to keep you guys kind of present.
Present and looking the other way, as I would come to know, but I didn't know that yet, right? Because I was just basically going in and out and getting something for the senior guys, or the senior guys would pull up, they'd hit the siren, and out would come a package. I don't know what was in it. Most of the times it was a beer or a 6-pack, maybe some food, some cigarettes. At the end of a week, that's $100 worth of stuff, right? So they easily saved $100 on themselves just by those types of connections.
Does New York still have a policy where bodegas can hand out free stuff to the cops?
They're not allowed.
They
never
kiboshed it. Probably thanks to you, right?
No. It was before me. That was never allowed. But I was a story I wanted to share with you briefly. I'm not going to get into the woods on this, but I'll give you a little bit of tidbit. So in the car with these 2 senior officers one day, they were telling myself and the young cop next to me on how, because there was a story broke about the 110 precinct, which was a corruption-riddled precinct in the 70s. They were involved in a lot of corruption in the 70s. A lot to do with the Colombian cartels, which no one really talks much about, but yes. And they had a sergeant's pad where the sergeant would go by and pick up his envelope from every location. And anyway, I don't want to get out in the woods with it, but in that discussion, they said to us, and one of the officers that turned on the cops ended up falling over a railing to his death.
In other words, keep your mouth shut.
It was a snowy night. He went out and slipped over the top of a 4-foot railing to his death. Now, I don't know how you slip over the top of a 4-foot railing, but he did.
Right.
So it was pretty clear that if you were a cop and you told on another cop, there could be an untimely ending to the situation at hand. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense. And, you know,
Do I have to read the tea leaves or between the lines?
our audience is smart. They get it.
It's pretty clear. A 4-foot railing, he went over the top.
Right.
You
You
know?
know what's interesting is a lot of cops, a lot of people talk about this myth of the blue shield. It's this line that you don't cross among cops. It's like an omerta to the mafia.
Right.
It's the blue shield is to the cops.
Right.
Do you feel that exists in departments still to this day?
To some extent, but
Okay.
mostly no.
Okay.
Okay.
That's good to hear.
It's true. No, it is good to hear, and you know why? And that's something we can talk about as we get further in the interview. But now now I get dropped into East New York, and I tell this story.
Right.
I graduate from this training with officer has great potential but needs to mature. So, they knew me. I'm still not mature, just so your audience knows. I'm still trying. Anyway, so I get dropped into East New York, and on my first day, and I tell this story, which is really impactful, and it harkens me back to my first few days in training, in the street, when I had tears in my eyes, saying, "What am I doing here? Like, do I really belong here?" And then a year and a half, almost 2 solid years later, 1983. So it's a year and a half later. I'm driving down Sutter Avenue. It's 6:30 in the morning. I have a 7 o'clock roll call or something, and I hear Elvis Presley on the radio in the ghetto. Now, if you can't write this in this Hollywood script. Here we are in LA. The Hollywood script, you can't write it like this. In the Ghetto comes on, and the young man's got a gun, and mama cries, they shoot him, they kill him, you know, and I can't quote the song right now, but you get what I'm saying. In the ghetto, and a young man dies. And here you have me, a young 23-year-old cop, or 22 at this time. I'm driving down the street into the ghetto, and I'm going, what am I doing? Like, I'm fucking crying. I mean, I'm not kidding you. I got tears in my eyes saying, what am I doing with my life? And it doesn't take long before you better sink or swim now. You're in. The water's deep, and it's getting deeper. And I either need to sink or swim right now. And so in my early couple jobs on patrol, by myself with a partner, so I say by myself, with no training officers. You know, this guy and I have no experience between the two of us, except we both worked in the same place in Queens. So we knew each other. We could have a beer together. We knew we could have a beer together. So I come across a shooting. So how the shooting unfolds is there's 2 guys walking down the street. It's 2 o'clock, it's about 3:30 in the morning, I'd say, closer to 3:30. And it's on Fulton Street under the L near Norwood. Right around Norwood and Fulton, but actually it's closer to Chestnut. So we're driving the wrong way down Fulton Street because it's at night. We're just cruising. We're looking for inspection stickers. I want to get my numbers up. I want to be that cop that writes the ticket so he can, you know, get a bonus with the boss. And we see 2 gentlemen, call them gentlemen, walking down the street with a tire iron on them. Like, okay. What are you doing with a tire iron or a 5-star? You know, the star with the jack for the star, the lug nut wrench. And I'm curious, but my partner is so laid back because he's a little bit older. He's an older Italian guy. He just came out of the academy. He just wants to do his 20 and go to sleep, right? I want to do shit. I want to make shit happen. I want to be a cop, you know? So he goes, nah, leave it alone, leave it alone. So I leave it alone. But it's bothering me. And we pull up, we turn, and there is a guy and dead in the street. So we don't know he's dead yet, of course. His name's Jesus, right? So my first job, Jesus is shot in the head in East New York, right around Cleveland and Chestnut on Fulton, in front of a we should call it Cuchifrito place. That's the name we use. It's like a Spanish all-night.
It's like a paisa bar.
You can get anything. You can get anything in there. From chicken to a woman. You can get anything you want in one of these places. Remy was big back in the day. So till 4 in the morning, you can get anything you want there. Anyway, so here's this guy shot dead in the street. So I go, who shot him? And the people say, they ran that way. And I go, did they have a tire iron? He goes, there's the tire iron on the floor. I go, okay. So my first guy I was going to accost in East New York not only had a tire iron on him, but he had a pistol. So, and I just left Queens after a year and a half, and I haven't made any gun arrests in Queens. Don't get me wrong, there's guns, but I didn't make any. And here I am in the middle of this whole scene.
Unbelievable, man.
Yeah.
So you're now in the big leagues, right? You popped your cherry, you got your first felony arrest.
I'm handling the blood,
Right.
the street. I'm handling the street now.
Right.
I'm there.
You're starting to feel the streets.
Oh,
and-
there's something happening here.
you're starting
This
to-
is real.
Right. And you know, one of my favorite movies is Training Day, and one of the big quotes was, "To protect the sheep, you got to catch the wolf, and it takes a wolf to catch a wolf." And so you are becoming a wolf right now, right?
You're learning how to be one of them.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Now let's
You're wiping off the purity, and
Right.
you're sucking up.
you're getting a
You're
little
sucking
dirt
up
on
the
you.
dirt, the
Right.
grit.
Right. And that grit goes real deep as you start to get involved with our Dominican friends.
That certainly it's been documented.
It's been documented.
Yeah.
And let's talk about the time that you pulled over so and so.
So and so. You mean the Puerto Rican kid?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I pull him over. He's got a 78 Corvette. He's got a 78 Corvette. Nothing. No plates, no license, nothing. He's got nothing. But he does have a title, and it's in his name. You know, so he says. I don't know what his name is. Call Juan Rodriguez. Let's say. I'm just.
It was a mystery, right?
He's a mystery. Back then, it was called the Puerto Rican mystery, okay? That's what it was known, because the Puerto Rican guys would come to America, and they were American citizens, but they didn't have all the paperwork together. And it just was the way it was. And they didn't really have to worry about that stuff when they came here, because they were Americans, but they didn't have the papers. No big deal, because in Puerto Rico, they paid. They just paid their way around. So here's this guy walking around with a knot in his pocket. I'm hungry. I got $6 in mine. He's got a knot. He's 18. He's got a Corvette and a knot in his pocket with hundreds, stacked like this. So I felt compelled to have some of his money. I mean, why did he have 18? He probably had 4,000 in cash in his bag, and a Corvette. I got a Honda that was wrecked that I repaired, and I got $6 in my pocket. The equanimity, it didn't add up.
Didn't sit well with you.
I said, how about a lobster for lunch? Rather than a sandwich, how about a lobster lunch? And the guy, he put a couple $100 on the seat, and I got my first lobster lunch.
And that was your first big kind of take, $200.
Yeah, I was a little nervous, but as I talk about it now, I laugh at myself.
That was light money.
It was lightweight, but back then it was a big move. It was a transition from me being the good, squared away guy to a guy who's willing to take a little something.
So the line moved a little bit.
Yes.
The line moved.
The lines start lining up, and they start moving.
Start blurring.
They start getting gray and gray and gray.
And that leads into bigger, I don't want to call them heists, but really shakedowns.
So the progression takes place is all of a sudden my partner that I'm working with at the time, who ends up going into the Keys because he figures the closest place to leave the country is the Keys. So he goes to Key Largo to become a cop. Anyway, but that's a later story. In the meantime, we keep finding these things in the street, these plastic things filled with rocks. We don't know what the hell they are. But people are calling up saying there's drug sales going on, but we don't know it's drugs. It doesn't look like a drug that we know.
Crack just hit the scene.
It's a plastic vial with a rock in it. It doesn't look like any drug we know. So we're throwing them out. So one day I get a call, and a guy lines his mouth. I don't know. He can't. You're a dentist today. I'm like, okay, you're in the dentist today. Well, big deal. You can't talk. No. I go, this guy. I'm about to walk away. I go, wait a minute here. I turn around, I grab him by the throat. I go, dentist, huh? Open your mouth. He opens his mouth. He's got crack vials lining the inside of his mouth from ear to ear. So he's probably got about 15, 20 crack vials. I tell him, spit them out. He spits them out down the sewer. 5 minutes later, we get a call to go back. The sewer plate, that was a 400-pound sewer plate. The sewer plate is removed. And the guy's down there with a stick and gum on it trying to get these vials back out. Long story short, we now realize that there's some money to be made with them. I don't know. My partner, the next job, we get about 50 little pieces on the next job. Like the same day, down the block is 50 pieces laying in a Marlboro box. So he takes them home. Next day he comes back, he hands me like $200-300. I go, what's that for? He goes, remember that shit I took home last night? He goes, He goes, that's cocaine. I go, really? He goes, yeah. He says, here's your money. I go, Jesus, we've been throwing this shit out for weeks. Why would we throw it out if you can get money for it? I'm this Long Island guy. Now all of a sudden I'm in the crack trade. I mean, this is ridiculous. That was the beginning.
And that's a crazy beginning because now you're in the crack business and you didn't even realize it.
I'm in the fucking crack business.
Right. And how did the things elevate into the big boys? Walk us into that.
So what happens is it becomes a daily effort now to get either the crack, the cocaine, or the cash. Because it's turned now we're now in a city under siege. Crack has taken control of everything in New York City. The police are controlled by it. The courts are controlled by it. The citizens are controlled by it. The junkies are controlled by it. Everybody's wrapped up in the crack world, and there's no end in sight. So they're begging the police to stop arresting low-level crack dealers and people in possession of crack because we're flooding the system.
You're clogging the whole thing.
Clogging up a whole system. So now we become the problem because we're creating a problem by making these arrests. So instead, they want us to just stop it. Stop the arrests, chase them, and make an intelligence report. What cop wants to make an intelligence report on a guy selling 6 bags of crack on a corner? It's not the way it goes. It's just not happening. So you became the armed protection of the local drug dealer. They didn't want you arresting him.
Unbelievable.
So now you're the armed protection of the local crack dealer. So we decided amongst ourselves, in some unspoken ways and some in clearly defined ways, that we were going to tax them. We can't make the arrests, so we're going to have to tax them. And we began a process. When I say we, it was me for sure, and other individuals that were aware of it were doing it as well. Because I know, because I got complaints from the crack guys I was shaking down. Oh, Vinny just shook me down 2 days ago. Can you please arrest me? What do you mean arrest you? I'm not arrest you. It's paperwork. They go, listen, if I don't go home with the money or the crack, I'm going to get killed. And this is what they're telling us now. Because it became that prevalent.
So the whole precinct, the 75th precinct, was all crooked.
Let's just say the whole ghetto, wherever that was. If it was the 7-5, the 7-3, the 7-1, the 8-1, the 8-3, the 7-9, the 7-7. And then sure enough, what breaks out is the 7-7 goes down. 13 cops get arrested right around the same time that I'm bringing you towards that period of time.
Big scandal, right? When 7-7 goes down.
13 cops get arrested.
13 cops get arrested. There's CIs everywhere. It's
and
yeah.
Everybody takes a big shit in Brooklyn. Okay?
We're all
because they're all scared.
We're all the 7-5 guys shaking in their boots, going, we're the next guys. And how did they get busted by the feds?
7-7, 7-5, 7-3, 7-9, all the sevens. 7-1.
Were the feds or was it IA?
So my understanding was they flipped the guys in the 7-7 were flipped by Internal Affairs.
Okay.
So it was rumored within the department that Internal Affairs was would be on us.
Were there any straight-laced guys in 7-5 that were like, Mike Dowd and his boys are they're up to no good? Were you starting to get that?
So to be fair, I think people knew what people were doing, but not each individual. But certain people had a higher profile, and I might have been one of them. Okay. Because it was so blatant.
You were obnoxious. You showed up in a Corvette, right?
Well, at some point, but that's after this.
That's later down the road.
On.
Yeah.
After I leave to go to 6-0 precinct, do a summer detail, meet a guy at the summer detail. A guy walks up to me. This is how life was back then. Guy walks up to me in the middle of a summer detail. Hispanic guy. He says, "You pulled me over." I told him on Logan and Atlantic, between Atlantic and Fulton. He goes, "Yeah." I said, "You had a maroon 280Z, I believe it was, a 280, could have been 260. He goes, "Yeah." I said, "I tossed your car." He goes, "Yeah." He said, "You missed 10 kilos. I want to fucking kill him at this point. I knew I had the right guy and at the right time, and I knew it was in his car. He goes, "You needed to go one step further. You would have had the 10 kilos in my car." I'm like, is this fucking guy for real? You're making me sick. He's admitting to a cop in uniform that I missed 10 kilos in his car. Now, I should have probably called the federales and said, I have a federal case for you. But no, he says to me, when you come back to East New York, I know you and your partner. We call you Batman and Robin. I said, oh, you call us Batman and Robin? He says, yes. We call the police on ourselves to see who's going to show up. And if you two show up, we know we're good.
No way.
Yeah.
You became that well known with drug dealers.
We know we're good, meaning if you catch us, we're not going to jail. You're going to take our shit. So when you're on, we carry less. But we know not to be concerned about getting arrested. I said, son of a bitch, these guys are smarter than they look.
Wow.
So he says, when you come back to 7-5, we should do business together. I said, we'll talk when I get back to the 7-5. So P.S. I never talked to this guy again, but I end up running into Baron Perez, who runs the local boombox shop.
Right. He had out here on the West Coast, we have these Allen Eds. They're stereo shops, right?
Right.
So he ran one of those.
He ran a place called Auto Sound City,
right,
which was one of the biggest ones in Brooklyn, if not the entire city. I mean, he had he could probably do 15 cars in a day in this big building he ends up in at this big.
And most guys in East New York that can afford a system like that, a $20,000 sound system.
Yeah, so these guys that don't work for a living, but they're putting $20,000 systems in their car and they get up at 2 in the afternoon. So, I mean, I'm not. The rocket and the scientist doesn't need to connect the dots here, you know. The Capizio shoes and back then it was the balloon. Was it the balloon silk pants?
Yeah, the Z Cavaricis and all that. Yeah.
Yeah, I had a pair.
Yeah.
Like the MC Hammer guys wore. So
So that was
we
the
called
clearance.
it the drug package. They had the drug package, the chain, the shoes, the nice clothes, and a Mercedes, Jaguar, BMW,
The
Porsche,
puffy jacket.
Porsche, the triple goose. It was the Kango, the gold, the diamond, their initials. I mean, it was just
It was
great.
a look, right?
It was an image. It's an image.
Right. And so this stereo house, right? It was almost like a clearinghouse. You knew who all the drug dealers were because they'd come in there and get their
When
shit
you're
done.
spending $15,000 to $20,000 on a stereo system and you don't work, you just wrote your own ticket. So the beauty of it is that we became known to them because we were there often, hanging out with Baron at the shop.
But Barron would tell you who to shake down, right? Or who had keys on them.
So it didn't have to work that way. Baron would solicit them and say, listen, we got these guys that if we need a favor or whatever, we can work a deal out with. And it turned out the first deal we made almost went bad because it was with La Compania. And if you watch the 7-5 documentary, right,
Let's talk about La Compania. They were the Dominican bad boys, right, that were running East New York and the drug trade at the time. Were they in the powders or the heroin or all the above?
So what I knew of them is they ran the crack basically.
Okay.
I mean, it was cocaine, and they did mostly cocaine, but they also did crack. So there was a major operation out of there, and he had several other locations. But according to Diaz, who knew more about them than I did, because I only got a one payday out of them, and what happened was they shorted me $700. Supposed to give me $8,000 for the week of July 4th to protect them, and when we got our payoff, which was after the week of July 4th, which by the way we didn't give them any information. We said, oh yeah, we deduced it's a holiday weekend. All the extra patrolmen are going to be in the city doing details, and all the other officers that are available, like narcotics, they take vacations.
Right.
And
so they want to barbecue with their
family. They want to
family.
barbecue with their families. They do a detail all year. 80% of them are going to be home with their families. So I said, you'll have a smooth sailing 4th of July weekend, I promise.
Right.
Nothing.
Right.
Again, at the end of this time, they send me the money. It's $700 short. Now, I had a decision to make. You're going to pay me $8,000, but short me $700? How can you do that? I mean, that's like you're not. What was that saying? Fuck you? You can't. I can't accept that. So I stood firm and I sent a message to them that they shorted us $700 and I need to be paid the $700. They sent back a message. Go fuck yourself. We're even.
Right.
That didn't go over well, so I put pressure on the store for about 4 or 5 days. I paid another team $1,000 to sit on the store when I wasn't working. So basically, for 16 hours a day, they had a patrol car in front of their store. So guess what happened to their store?
The sales dropped.
The sales dropped precipitously. Yeah. Right. So now he's pissed off. He sends a message to Baron Perez that he's going to have me killed.
So, Mike, now you're starting to you're really deep in the game, man, and you're operating almost like a gangster. You know, if someone shorts you, you're coming back to bully around. You're not acting like a church mouse.
No,
you know.
So, no, it's all out there. It's open. It's right. Wide open.
It's wide open, and as this is happening, you start to get a little, bravado with your money now. You're
right.
starting to make money. Tell us a little bit. You bought a Corvette. You bought a condo in Myrtle Beach.
Right.
Speak about.
So first of all, we're telling the story a little bit out of order. So just so your audience knows, that the fact is that I end up taking some Noriega's cocaine from.
What do you mean, Manuel Noriega?
Yeah, Manny, the pineapple. What they call him, the Pineapple Man or something, right? Yeah, his cocaine. He was shipping cocaine to America, and the Noriega's defense team was protecting his stuff in East New York. And why I know that is because we ended up on a case where some kid did a stick-up. He ran into his apartment, and the apartment was loaded with cocaine, with trunks of cocaine. How do we know there's cocaine in it? Well, we ended up seeing the trunks, and I tried to finally I opened one up. If you see in the 7.5, I hit the thing and a plume of cocaine came out of the suitcase. Now I had a problem because I couldn't get the suitcase out of the house. How am I going to take a suitcase out filled with cocaine and then steal it? So I had to figure a way to get the cocaine out. So we had to open up the suitcase and start shoving it in our pockets to get it out of the house. So the Panamanians were there, and they had like a military bearing, and they had machine guns under their jackets. And we pulled up to go back in the house and clean it out. And when we pulled up, there was a limo there with guys with machine guns under their jackets. And I went, you know what? This might not be a very good idea. So let's just forget it for now. So we left, and then I think they packed the house up and emptied it out shortly there, like that same night. They just emptied everything out and left. I mean, they're not going to take a chance to get busted. So that's how that went over. So I had Noriega's cocaine. I was in the big league. I bought a condominium in Myrtle Beach with that money. Why? Because I like golf and I like beach. So I bought a condo, and. From there, I ended up going into a lot of. The streets started to pay me money every day, and so the career became more about what I can get than what I can do, and so I totally reversed the roles I'm embarrassed to say it, but it's the truth. I went from being a cop who I actually liked being a police officer to being a rogue, completely unhinged thief.
A thief who, and you mentioned to me, Mike, you didn't really like cocaine, you just like the smell of it, right?
No, just the smell, taste. No, the reality is, I never did cocaine until after a hockey game one night. My partner was in the car with me, and he opened up a tinfoil with some flake in it. I'm like, what are you doing with this? He goes, I want to do some, and you're my partner. You're going to have to do it with me, or we can't work together. He said, and the fact that I showed it to you, you got to do some now anyway. So it's like mob stuff, right? If I don't do it, he's going to kill me maybe, right? Because now he feels he's jeopardized. So I did a little bump with him. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know how to do it. So I tasted it, didn't do nothing. But then about 3 months later, I ended up doing my own thing with it, and it became tasty. And I enjoyed it. And the best was the bazooka, the pink Peruvian scale. It was the best cocaine.
Yeah, you called it the Pink Panther, right?
Pink. There's a lot of pink stuff I like, and in this case, it was the Peruvian pink flake.
So you're rolling a Corvette. You've got the Myrtle Beach condo. You're doing blow. You're living like kind of this gangster life, and you're doing it in a uniform.
Like Al Pacino in Scarface, And you take that image on in your head. It's like it was addictive. Not just the cocaine, but the
But you
the whole
felt
image.
above the law, right? You
felt like God, right? Because who's going to chase you? The cops? You're a cop. You're going to know if they're after you because you feel you would know, and you look for the traps. They tried setting me up numerous times. And then the fact that I survived, all my partners had left. 3 of the 4 of them left. That when I say partners, guys that I worked around, so guys that we would do things with. Like, so you have one partner, but there's other people that you work with that you consider partners. Like if you ever saw Prince of the City, not my partners. You can't make me testify against my partners. That's that rat. But that's how he handled it. In my case, many of the guys left, and then sure enough, what happens with me? They accuse me of wearing a wire because my partners left. But I just said, I have a wife and kids and some mortgages, like 3 of them right now. I can't walk away. So I ended up sticking it out. I became labeled a rat. And my career took an ominous turn there. I ended up with Ken Urell. We did our thing. We got $8,000 a week from the Diaz organization. And from there, our fortunes were good and then certainly bad.
Right. And I mean, you had no common sense. Why would you show up to the precinct in a brand new Corvette?
Right.
I mean, wasn't that a red flag? Like,
A red vet. It was a red vet with a white convertible top. So it may have been a red herring flag. But the fact of the matter was this. I was done. I drove that Corvette, parked it in the lieutenant's spot on purpose. Because I really was like looking for help.
You were calling out for help.
I was done. I didn't know how to stop. I figured 2 things. Either they could stop me now, or I was invincible.
Did you feel that there was an ongoing investigation now on you?
I could feel them
could feel
everywhere.
the
They
heat.
were following me at home. Listen, I could tell stories that would fill your whole day up here. They would follow me at home. They'd be going to my stores that I would be at, my grocery store, my liquor store, my tobacco store, wherever I was going, they were following me off duty. So they weren't even following me at work anymore. They were following me off duty on Long Island in Brentwood, which is 36 miles from East New York where I was working and doing my deed.
And who were they, the feds or
No,
IA?
this was internal affairs.
Okay, so internal affairs is now, there's a microscope on you. They know you're a bad cop.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why didn't you just retire at that point or go down to the Keys or Florida?
So I end up, as one of my partners did go to the Keys, he went to Key Largo, in fact, and took a job as a real estate agent down there, and became a Monroe County sheriff at some point. In fact, I ran into one of his, a guy worked with my partner, his son. I ran into him at a police call down in Key Largo 4 years ago, almost 5 years ago. He said, "You're Dowd." He goes, "Yeah." He goes, my father worked with your partner down here in Monroe County," which was quite an interesting twist. However, so I decide to stay, all right? They all leave. I decide to stay. I carry the burden now of being why am I the last man standing? So they think I'm internal affairs. They think a lot of different things about me. So at some point here, I end up going to rehab because the heat and the pressure is so heavy. I mean, there's stories that I can get into.
Right.
Lieutenants are following me here. They're watching me here. Every time I turn around, there's someone bumping into me that's off duty, that's a cop. They're monitoring me so closely that you think the cocaine's getting you paranoid, but sometimes paranoia could be the truth, right? When you're right, you're not paranoid. And they will follow me 24/7. So I ended up in a rehab. I did a rehab for 2 years. And I figured, like you mentioned, did you try to get retired? I tried to get a psychological disability pension by telling them I had an alcohol problem. I can't stop drinking. I need help. And so they didn't go for that, to tell you the least. They said there's only 2 ways you're getting off this job, Dowd: handcuffs or retiring straight. You're not going out on a disability pension.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I gave it a shot.
Right.
I have to admit, I gave it a shot. Pulling that Corvette up was the beginning of the shot.
Right.
And when they don't arrest you for driving a $38,000 vehicle with the price tag still on the window, and you're 24 years or 25 years old, and you got 3 homes, and no one's doing anything to you, you feel invincible.
You believe your own bullshit.
You
basically.
can believe your own
Yeah.
bullshit.
Now, when they would assign you, say, a rookie guy, how would you turn him out? How would you flip him to go into your program?
The way they flip me, you get in the car, tell a kid, listen, there's a bodega over here. I want you to go inside, get a couple cold ones. He comes out with some Coca-Colas. You tell him, cold ones? Coca-Cola? What would you do if you were at home and someone said, go grab some cold ones? He said, I'd come out with a 6-pack of Bud or Coors. I said, go back in the bodega and tell the guy it's cold ones for Mike and come back out. And sure enough, it worked 9 times out of 10. One time they tried it, I tried it with a female officer, and she looks at me and she goes, I'll have a beer with you. She says, but I was sent here. Because I was testing her. She says, I was sent here. I testified against some cops in the 114, and I'm here to cool off. I'm not here to get anybody. I'll have a beer with you, she says to me.
That's crazy.
You imagine this?
She was actually sent to wire you out. Yeah.
She was sent from working for Internal Affairs in the 114 precinct. She came over to 7-5. She's in the car with me, the guy who's the most examined officer, and I go get a fucking beer right in front of her, and she goes, I know you're having a beer. I don't give a fuck. I'll have one with you, she says.
Right. Mike, you finally, the walls close, the house of cards falls, right? And now you're sentenced to 14 years, right?
Right.
In federal prison.
Right.
And I asked you, why didn't you lock it up and go PC? And you couldn't do that. You wanted to just be on the main line with all the other guys, but weren't you a target inside that?
Well, so to be fair, initially, the Federal Bureau of Prisons in MCC New York put me in 9 South, which anybody who's listening to your show would know 9 South, if they're familiar with MCC New York, was protective custody in one way or another. It's called the Hole, it's called PC, there's a lot of things you can call it, but they call it special housing, there's all kinds of words for it. So I was kept there for the first 9 months of my stint before I ended up getting my plea deal, which was not a very good deal. Initially, it was 30 years. Then they knocked it down to 24 years. And then they knocked it down to 17 years. And then they finally knocked it down to 12 to 15. And but in the interim, I had run into every person that had anything to do with the federal system. They all come through 9 South at some point. In fact, one of the guys I arrested came through 9 South, and I ended up helping him out. So, there's a little bit of camaraderie still amongst inmates when you need each other for one thing or another. So I ended up doing fairly well. I said, listen, I've seen almost every guy come through. They're either ratting, want to rat, or should have rat. And because they're all looking at sentences longer than my arm, and they're all scared. They want to go home someday. No matter, Pappy Mason, he was involved with the killing Eddie Burns. They were all in the same area as me. I saw them all come through. There's a common decency amongst men. If you don't fuck with them, they won't fuck with you. So I kept to myself. I said, bring me out. I threatened to fucking hang myself if they didn't let me out of the hole. I threatened to hang myself, and they let me out in 2 minutes after. I said, why didn't I say this 7 months ago?
Right. And as you did your time, Mike, did you ever reflect back and go, man, because you and I just had a cigar with my friend who's a former Brooklyn PD guy from 84th.
Right. Who knew of me quite a bit.
Who knew your whole...
And knew some of my guys.
Knew your guys, knew the whole story. And he said in front of both of us that you fucked everything up for all the good cops.
Yeah.
And they started getting complaints, cases got tossed. It was just a fucking nightmare.
Yeah, and you know what? I never heard it from his perspective. And that made me pause, because I've always, look, when you get in trouble, you're fighting for your life, okay? And at that moment, all you care about is you and survival. So when I got in trouble for my misdeeds, and rightfully so, all I cared about was how do I lessen the burden on me? And at some point, listen, all along you've tarnished the badge, there's no question. You tarnished the badge from the first time you did something wrong, though. Okay, and many guys will sit here and tell you, if they're honest, they've all done some things while in the police force they're not proud of, okay? They've all skirted the line in some way or another. Maybe it was a Gucci handbag, maybe it was a diamond ring, maybe it was a Rolex that they found, or a perp, whatever it was, or a dead body and there was something there, he's got $1,000, no one's gonna know, he's dead, right? So, there's guys that have done these things and didn't go far, but you know what? I hate to say this to you, you did the same thing as me in a different manner, okay? Now, I'm not calling you out if you did it, but if you did it, you're not beyond reproach, okay? So I want to keep that aside for a second and take my own responsibility. But what I did systematically changed the police department, and I want to tell that friend of yours and mine that the fact that I got caught and then spoke in front of the commission on police corruption, I enabled other officers to be able to come forward against people like me. Because now they had an example. Now, and many people call it the Dowd case, right? Many jurisdictions have had their Dowd case come their way.
The LAPD calls it the Dowd effect.
Okay, so that, well, How you doing, guys? I'm in LA right now, right? Big time. So the Dowd effect, right? So should I be proud or saddened, for having my integrity impugned wherever I go, right?
I have a lot of LAPD friends, LA County sheriffs. In fact, I have cousins that are LA County sheriffs. What's your message to the guys that are playing the game right?
So if you're playing the game right, continue on that path. Let me tell you why. Because today, I don't have a pension. Okay? And that's a selfish statement. But the fact is, I don't have a pension. I have to scrape for my life. I took a perfectly honorable profession and I dirtied it. And so I hope to be able to be an inspiration for you not to do the same thing as myself. And because everybody falls suspect to the temptations of the street and the life that it could give you. But in the end, it never gives you peace. I'd be driving to work thinking about, am I going to crash on the way because my body was freezing up on me from the stress at 30 years old. I mean, these are the things that you live with. I go to prison. I got a 14-year prison sentence, which I was fortunate enough to just get, and prison life for a cop is not as much fun as you think it is, okay? At all. Every person, 1,800 men on that compound, you are the target. Now, not everybody's looking to get in trouble, but if there's one guy in there that wants to break an egg, it might be on you. And it's never, the rewards at the end, it's a short-sighted, it's like a junkie. I want to get high right now. And that's how I lived my life as a police officer. And the immediate gratification never pays off. So I hope anybody that's on the straight and narrow recognizes that they took the job to serve the public, not themselves.
Right. And Mike, what have you done? But you have served your time, and even my former Brooklyn PD guy said he respects you for serving your time and doing your just sentence.
Right.
But beyond that, what are you training other officers how to spot corrupt cops like yourself?
So after I came home, I was approached by the NYPD, and they asked me, Internal Affairs asked me to do some basically this, sit down and discuss my career and the tricks of the trade on how I got around them and how I noticed certain things. In fact, during the process of testifying for the Mullen Commission, I taught them how to catch police officers like me, and they took down the whole 30th precinct. They call it the Dirty 30. That was a major story in '93, the day after I testified at the Mullen Commission. They choreographed it, I didn't, and they took down 30 cops on the midnight shift in the 30th precinct. So I already began, I hope, the process of redemption by agreeing to give the Mullen Commission and the NYPD my experience on how to catch a guy like me.
Right. And, you see so much different corruption in Baltimore. My other friend Mike and I were talking about how drugs are thrown on suspects to create a case.
Yes, that's bullshit. That's flake shit.
You never really did those types of moves.
That's cheap shit.
Yeah.
That's bullshit.
Yeah.
That's, listen, what I did was bad, but come on, you could create a crime? Come on.
Right.
Shake the guy down straight. Don't set him up.
Right. Right. No, it's.
I mean, what are you doing? You're a criminal for doing that, and I did criminal things. But I mean, you're creating a crime now. Like that's indefensible. None of the things that I've done are defensible, but that's indefensible to create a situation because you want this guy. That's bullshit. Get him right.
Right.
Get him right.
Right. And what do current active law enforcement think of you when they bump into you? What's kind of some of the?
I get a lukewarm. It can be. You know what it is? I think when they meet me, they realize that I'm still a human being. So that's part of, I guess, the charm of being able to come back. You get to meet people again and rewrite your life. But I tell you one thing: it's the worst feeling in the world when you come home from prison and you look at a police officer and you put your head down because you can't really go over there and say, "Hey, fella." Because that was you. You were on the job. And so if you retired from the job, you could say, I'm retired from the 7-5. I did 14 years. I got injured. I got shot. Whatever, But I can't. So it's a very lonely feeling.
Yeah.
You'll give it all up. You gave up your brotherhood.
Yeah, and it's a shame. But the redemptive story here, Mike, is that you're trying to improve your life and society around you. and tell us a little bit what the future holds for you. Is there a movie beyond what we saw, the seven?
So I'll give you the rundown, and I've said this. My life rights are owned by a company, and they're looking to do the 7.5 movie and a TV series with the life rights. If it comes to fruition, they call it's in development hell, and you people out here in LA know what development hell is, right? So it's been doing that now for about 6 years. But right now, I understand that it's been announced.
Adam Sandler?
Not Adam, Ben Stiller. Ben Stiller. I get names confused. Ben Stiller is supposed to be involved in directing this. He did a good job on that Dannemora show. He did a TV series.
Great. Yeah,
he did a TV series on that. So he's involved in directing this, and MGM, and Eli Holtzman, who just took over as a vice president at Sony. No, the president of the nonfiction division at Sony, Eli Holtzman. You know, we've had our wrestling match, him and I, but you know what? He's a pretty solid guy. You know?
Yeah. No, that's great. And
he still owns it. He's still part of it. 7.5.
Are you doing any other consulting with any other police department?
So I have a podcast with John Alight, the Alight Show with Mike Dowd. So we do a podcast, and we discuss current events. We discuss life from our perspective, and I think it was helpful because a lot of cops watch it, and a lot of gangsters watch it. So and civilians, and they learn how the whole mechanism of the police, of organized crime, how it has worked in the past, and that today we're not trying to glorify any of that shit. We're trying to tell you straight where it is, how it is, and how you should live your life. Both John and I, you know, you've met John. We have a tough life today because of the things the path that we chose.
Yeah, but at least John is doing something for the kids, and he's trying to get the inner city kids.
As I do. I go to colleges. I speak at universities. So I'm doing what I can. Sometimes you have a rough go because people are reticent to step out and say, come. You know, but once they hear me speak, like I had a college in New Jersey, they were dead against me coming, and someone actually paid them to let me come there. I didn't know that. And there was a film crew from Japan, or one of these crews. And anyway, long story short, after getting past the front door and doing the thing, the person that was most against my speaking at this college, I think it was St. Pete's in New Jersey, the woman came over to me and said, I just want you to know I was dead against you coming here, and I'm so happy you did. 'Cause not a person left, you know, while I spoke about my experience.
Yeah, no, it's an honest appraisal of, and you do not glorify it. You tell the story. You wish you didn't do it. You feel bad about it. You're giving back to society. If there is a troubled youth, or someone in a police department right now that is in a blurred line moment in time, are you available to
Yes. So I mean, I've had police officers reach out to me in the last couple of years since the documentary, and who attempted suicide, who considered suicide. I've had youth come. Your story is inspiring, and I always say, what inspired you? They said that you went so low, but you've come back. And that's what they love the most about it. And I actually carry that as a badge of honor now. My badge of honor is I've come back.
I love that. I love a comeback story, and so does America and the world. How can our audience reach out to you, Mike Dowd?
Well, I'm on all social media sites. You can Google me. You can find me, The Mike Dowd on Instagram, Michael Dowd on Facebook, and Twitter, The Mike Dowd.
Right, and if you guys haven't seen the 7.5,
it's a great watch.
It's a great watch. It's fantastic. It's very well done. Mike Dowd, thank you so much for coming by today. We really appreciate having you.
Thanks for having me.